Christ is risen. My name is Joe, and my pronouns are he and him, and I was risen by my alarm at 5:30 this morning for the sunrise service by the river. Thanks to Lizzie and all of those who gathered for a windy and gray morning. It's a simple highlight for me every Easter. And for future reference, if you come to the sunrise service, you're allowed to fall asleep during the sermon. Guilt-free. Do you believe in the resurrection? That's the big question in the air at Easter. Do you believe in the resurrection? Maybe that feels like a question with an obvious answer. There certainly will be some churches this Easter morning where the pastor asks the question and everyone says yes, and they shout and they cheer and celebrate and then go home. Good for them. For better or worse, I'm not that pastor. I kind of think it's my job to challenge the obvious answers and to confuse your otherwise perfectly clear thinking. I want to know what you're thinking when you hear that question, or at least I want you to know what it is that you're thinking and what your answer, be that yes or no, what your answer really means. I promise this is still a good news Sunday. We are going to celebrate and cheer in a properly reserved Mennonite fashion. I just want to make sure that we put a little thought into what it is that we are celebrating today. Because not all of us will take this question to mean the same thing. Not all of the billions of Christians around the world, and not all of us in this room. Some of us hear this question as referring to the physical resurrection of the dead of Jesus of Nazareth, as a historical event, that first day of the week following his crucifixion by the Romans in the first century of the Common Era. Some of us believe that happened. Full stop, exclamation mark. Jesus died, his body was placed in the tomb, and then on Easter morning, Jesus rose again and appeared to his disciples alive and in person. The details are a bit fuzzy. The whole thing is inherently beyond belief, but some of us choose to believe in the literal resurrection. Alternatively, some of us believe that something happened on that day. We might not know exactly what went down. We might never know exactly what went down, but whatever it was, Jesus' followers came to understand that this mysterious something was the resurrection. The verifiable facts of the situation are few and far between. Even the four Gospels don't agree on the details. And in many of those accounts, Jesus wasn't entirely the same after the resurrection. He was walking through walls. He was appearing and disappearing unexpectedly. So we're not sure what happened, but something happened. Incredible. And whatever it was, Jesus' friends accepted and named that something as the risen Christ. And for them, that belief changed everything. They saw him die, and yet in some way he was still alive, still present with them, and they carried forth the Spirit of Jesus into their world near and far. So some of us believe that they believed, and that is also a way of believing in the resurrection. And there are some of us who step even further back. Some of us believe in the story itself, regardless of how historical it may or may not have been. Whatever happened, and whatever the first generations of followers of Jesus believed about what happened, whether they met the risen Christ in person or whether it was a metaphor for a spiritual reality, they were transformed by this encounter with Christ. The world was transformed by Jesus and those who came after him, and that transformation is a verifiable theological and historical fact. So to some of us, whether the specific events of Jesus' resurrection might be a myth or a metaphor instead of history, for some of us, that doesn't matter as much. Either way, the resurrection is compelling and powerful in the Spirit of Christ that lived on in the communities of faith that came after Jesus, on down to us, where now our own very present experience of Christ is real for us. And in that way, the resurrection is also our story in a very real and meaningful way. And having faith in that story of resurrection is another legitimate answer to this question. Do you believe in the resurrection? So one set of answers about that are about the resurrection of Jesus as a historical event and what came after that. A different set of answers is more about theology than history. From this perspective, to believe in the resurrection is about the meaning of the cross and the empty tomb. The resurrection is not just an event, but it's a whole theology overlaid onto the event. And so what we mean by the resurrection will depend on our theology. Some Christians believe the resurrection is the moment where Christ defeated Satan, where good triumphed over evil once and for all. Some believe the resurrection demonstrates what you might call the Chumbawamba nature of Christ. I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never going to keep me. Okay, some other 90s children in the room. I didn't learn that particular one in seminary, but I was taught that the resurrection was vindication for Jesus. Confirmation that Jesus was who he said he was. Validation of the sacrifice and the forgiveness of the cross. It's like the crucifixion was the payment and the resurrection was the receipt. It's the verification that the transaction went through and was accepted. That's a bit crude, but that's the idea. So for some, the resurrection is the proof of Jesus' divinity, of our forgiveness, of the validity of his teachings, whatever meaning we assign to who Jesus was and what he did. Whatever your theology of the empty tomb might be, that's all wrapped up in this question and what we say we mean when we say we believe in the resurrection. Or in a different direction, a further set of answers sees the resurrection of Jesus as a direct link to a future resurrection, the resurrection of the dead, of all of God's people, or at least the saints. For some of us, our minds go to scenes of rapture. The trumpet shall sound and the dead in Christ shall rise first. Jesus rose from the grave, and by that same power we might also be raised from our own graves later. The resurrection of the dead was actually a Jewish concept long before Jesus adopted it. A major theme of the Hebrew Bible, especially among the prophets, was this future day of the Lord, the end of the age, where God would come, ushered in by the Messiah, to set things right. And on that day, the dead would rise from their graves to receive their judgment along with the living. Jesus talked about the resurrection in those terms, and it was a significant debate among various Jewish groups of those days. Some believed in the resurrection, like the Pharisees, and some did not, like the Sadducees. That's why they were sad, you see. Don't blame me for that one. That was part of the Bible curriculum 40 years ago. Anyway, this linear end of days thinking is common among most Judeo-Christian theologies. And the resurrection of Jesus, for many Christians, goes hand in hand with that future resurrection of the dead. So for some, believing in the resurrection is a package deal. It's combined with a whole other assortment of beliefs about the nature and timing of the end times, heaven and hell, and all of eternity. One more category under this question, and that's the more general, I would call it mystical, or even more natural belief in the resurrection. The belief that life is stronger than death. The resurrection of spring following winter every time. I haven't seen it this year, but in years past, I've seen this sign on buses around the city. It's not about the bunny. I get it. The Easter bunny is overdone commercialism, similar to Santa at Christmas. But still, every time I saw this, I wanted to protest Easter is about bunnies, the symbol of fertility. It's the same story. Life is as bountiful as rabbits, the new life of eggs and green grass and the flowers. That's the Easter story resonating all over the natural world. Of course Jesus was resurrected. Life is stronger than death. Death is not the end of anything. Life finds a way. You can argue about which came first, the chicken or the empty tomb, but it is the same story on a universal level, the cosmic Christ we sang about last Sunday. Jesus is the embodiment of this natural truth, our great hope that the grave is a seasonal reality, that death leads to new life everywhere and always. That is also the resurrection, and clearly one that I'm quite excited about at the end of a very long winter. So, do you believe in the resurrection? Which one? All four. These are not mutually exclusive. There is variety and space within each of those, and perhaps more that slipped my notice. Take a minute to appreciate the creativity and diversity of human expression. This was a single day in history that has led to a wide variety of experiences of God. And they're not all correct, but they all are life-giving in their own way. God is present, and Jesus is magnified and made known in all of these ways. Beyond all of that, though, there is another distinction that I want to make in this question of belief in the resurrection. The distinction between belief in and belief that. I asked, do you believe in the resurrection? But what I've been talking about so far is mostly belief that. Belief that Jesus was physically raised from the dead. Belief that Christ defeated Satan via the empty tomb. Belief that our bodies will also be resurrected. Belief that life is stronger than death. And those are thoughts, statements, arguments, questions to engage our minds. I think that happened. This makes sense to me. I believe that or not. Compare that to believing in something, which goes beyond thinking something to getting involved in it, committing to it. I believe that the Toronto Blue Jays are going all the way this year, versus I believe in the Blue Jays, so I'm going to bet my mortgage payment on them. Belief that, well, they're a good team. I can see it happening. Sure, go Jays. Versus believe in, my money is on the line. Let's go Jays, I'm all in. Don't let me down, we are in this together. Not that I'm recommending either of those things. I don't really know anything about baseball. Writer John Philip Newell explains it better. He describes this distinction based on the teaching of Jewish theologian Martin Buber, using the words trust in versus believe that. Buber distinguishes between trust and belief, by which he means trust in and belief that. If I say to you, for instance, I trust you, I am saying that I have faith in who you are and in the heart of your being. If, on the other hand, I say, I believe such and such about you, I am saying that I have some information about you that I believe to be true, like your gender or name or home address. Trust in is about giving ourselves to relationship with God, allowing the divine presence to be our inspiration and guide. We simply open to it and are renewed by it. Buber calls this kind of faith holy insecurity. Our encounters with the living presence cannot be tied down or defined. We are simply to receive them as gifts and then let them pass in their own time, like the summer breeze that will come again and renew us. A German pastor once asked Buber if he believed in the divine. Buber responded by saying, if to believe in God means to be able to talk about God in the third person, then I do not believe in God. But if to believe in God means to be able to talk to God, then I do believe in God. Do you believe in the resurrection? Do you trust in it? Do you embrace the holy insecurity of it and still choose to invest in it and build your life around it? What does that look like, to live in trust in the resurrection of Christ, however you define that? Which is not to say that what you believe that doesn't matter. Believing that the Jays are going all the way might lead me to believing in them to the point of financial ruin. Whereas believing that sports gambling is risky and addictive leads me to believing in other ways to manage my finances and experience my emotions. What we believe about the resurrection matters, and it's meant to lead us into a deeper relationship of trust, to live as though what we believe is true. So for those of us who believe that the resurrection of Jesus was a historical event, can we see that belief is a choice? It's not something that can be proven. Jesus' resurrection is incredible, unbelievable in the literal sense. So let's not waste our time trying to prove it or defend it or convince others that it happened. Can we instead let our belief in that resurrection lead us to a faith of humility and wonder? It's so easy to spend our lives in pursuit of certainty, proof, to build these systems of thinking that protect us from the holy insecurity of faith. And before long, we find ourselves stuck in determinism and fatalism, only trusting what we can see. And then we convince ourselves that we know how things are going to go, and we try to manipulate the present to get to or to avoid particular outcomes in the future. Well, we can't afford to be generous in this economy, we have to save for retirement. Well, we can't support safe injection sites, that's a slippery slope. That will just encourage more drug use. Well, we have to bomb them because we're pretty sure that they're going to bomb us. I've got opinions today. If we don't let our beliefs lead us to trust in, we get stuck in a religion that doesn't look very much like Jesus. It's not that we ignore logic and data. It's not that we fail to make preparations, but we understand the limits of that. Sometimes we choose to do the right thing instead of the certain thing or even the smart thing. Sometimes we choose vulnerability, even when that might look like defeat or death, because we believe in the resurrection by faith, not by sight. We don't know what's coming next. Our God is beyond that kind of knowing. Instead, we trust and we hope. Our faith gives us confidence in what we can't see. It gives substance to the things we hope for. Likewise, if we believe that the resurrection has a particular theological meaning, we live into that. Here again, some of us can get so caught up in trying to prove and argue and logic puzzle our way into the one true meaning of Easter that we never get around to living it. If we believe that the resurrection is the victory of Christ over Satan, good over evil, if that's our belief, then we don't need to live in fear of evil. We invest in goodness instead of defenses. We practice love as though we actually believe in love that is stronger than hate. And if we believe that the resurrection is about the forgiveness of sin, then hallelujah, we let go of guilt. Not easy to do, but the resurrection can be a place that we keep coming back to grace. Grace for ourselves, especially grace for others. And so on. Whatever your theology, it's not about having it all correct. It's about letting belief and logic and wisdom lead us into a life of faith. Likewise, if we believe in the resurrection of the dead, let that release us from the fear of death. Lizzie shared this quote last week from theologian Mary Collot. Salvation is liberation into the fullness of life. Do you believe that death has been defeated, that we will rise again in whatever form? If you believe that, then live now in the fullness of life. Not that we become daredevils and drive it like a rental, but we live as though we know that there is more than this, as though there is more to the story, because it's not about me. Trusting in that, I don't need to cling to my life. No matter what happens to me, I am part of this bigger story that is life beyond death, beyond my death. So too, if faith in the resurrection is about the mystical reality of life that is stronger than death, if I believe that seasons come and seasons go, then we can expect that this too shall pass and that everything belongs. When hard things come, we can trust that there is goodness even here, the seed of new life that is undeniable. And when it's warm and sunny, we can hold that with open hands as well, knowing that it's not meant to last forever, and that this season will also come to an end to make way for next year's new growth. Easier said than done, all the way down. And yet we know this can be done. This is what Jesus did. He put his own life on the line for what he believed in. He went before us in life and in death, not asking his followers to do anything that he wasn't already actively doing himself. That's the incarnation of Christ. God is with us in this world. God believes in us, invests in us, shares the full weight of our decisions, rejoices and grieves with us. Jesus said it this way in John 14, "Because I live, you will live too. On that day you will know that I am in my Father, you are in me, and I am in you." We are all in this together. When we live in trust, we will walk with Jesus and with those who followed him and with those who followed them all the way down through history. And so we are together the body of Christ. Not one of us trusts in all of this all the time, and let alone lives it out particularly well. This is all too much for any one of us. But together, believing with each other as part of this grand story, as we will sing in a moment, Christ is alive and goes before us to show and share what love can do. Christ is risen. Some of you took that sleeping permission a little too far. Let's try that again. Christ is risen. Christ is risen indeed. And now it's our turn. May it be.